The mountain air carried the sweet scent of pine as James Harrison adjusted his camera tripod, carefully positioning it to capture the perfect shot of the sunset. As a wildlife photographer, he had grown accustomed to spending nights alone in the wilderness, but something about this evening felt different. The sky seemed to shimmer with an unusual intensity, and the stars appeared closer than ever before. His campfire crackled cheerfully beside him, casting dancing shadows across his weathered equipment cases. James had just finished capturing the golden hour and was looking forward to reviewing his shots while enjoying a quiet dinner when the first anomaly appeared, a streak of iridescent light cutting across the darkening sky. Through his telephoto lens, James tracked the mysterious object, his photographer's instincts taking over. Whatever this was, it wasn't a meteor or any aircraft he'd ever seen. The object moved with deliberate precision, eventually disappearing behind the treeline several miles away. James lowered his camera, heart racing with excitement at the prospect of having captured something extraordinary. He was so absorbed in reviewing the photos that he almost missed the sound, a soft whirring, like the hum of sophisticated machinery, growing steadily closer. When he finally looked up, she was there. The figure stood at the edge of his campsite, tall and imposing in armor that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Two elegant antennae extended from her helmet, moving slightly as if tasting the air. But what caught James's attention most was the weapon she held, a blade of pure energy that cast an otherworldly glow across the clearing. "Your beacon burns bright, Earthling," she spoke, her voice carrying an ethereal quality that seemed to bypass his ears and resonate directly in his mind. "You dare to challenge the stellar sovereignty with such a brazen display?" James blinked, looking between the alien warrior and his modest campfire. What? "This signal fire," she continued, gesturing with her energy blade toward the flames. "It burns in the sacred pattern of our ancient war declaration. Are you acting alone, or does your planet's military command this provocation?" Despite the surreal nature of the situation, James couldn't help but laugh, a short, nervous sound that made the alien warrior tilt her head in confusion. "This is just a campfire," he explained, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm a photographer. I'm out here taking pictures of wildlife and landscapes. No war declarations, I promise." The warrior took a step forward, her armor catching the firelight in mesmerizing patterns. "I am Commander Thura of the Stellar Sovereignty. Your explanation seems improbable. Our scanners detected this exact energy signature across multiple sectors. It matches perfectly with our ancient texts." James ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the situation. "Look, Commander Thura, I can prove it. Would you like to see my photos? Maybe that would help explain why I'm really here." Thura hesitated, her energy blade humming softly in the night air. After what seemed like an eternity, she gave a slight nod. "Proceed, but know that any hostile movement will be met with immediate response." James slowly reached for his camera, maintaining eye contact with Thura as he did so. He pulled up the photos he'd taken that evening on the display screen, stunning shots of sunset-painted clouds, a deer drinking from a mountain stream, and finally, the mysterious light in the sky that he now realized must have been Thura's ship. The alien commander moved closer, her curiosity seemingly overwhelming her caution. She leaned in to examine the images, and James caught a glimpse of iridescent skin beneath her helmet's visor. "These are captures of moments? Like memory crystals?" "Something like that," James nodded, encouraged by her interest. "Photography is about preserving beautiful moments, sharing perspectives, helping people, or, well, beings, see the world in new ways." Thura's antennae twitched, and she lowered her weapon slightly. "And this?" She gestured to the campfire again, "is truly not a war signal? It's for warmth, light, and..." James reached into his pack, pulling out a bag of marshmallows, something we call s'mores. "Would you like to try one? It might help convince you of our peaceful intentions." The commander stared at the bag as if it might contain explosive devices. Your offer of sustenance, this is a peace gesture. Exactly, James smiled, carefully opening the bag. On Earth, sharing food is often a way of building trust and friendship between cultures. Though I have to admit, I've never made esmores for an alien before. To his surprise, Thera actually sat down on a log across the fire, though she kept her weapon within reach. Her helmet dematerialized, revealing a face that was both alien and striking, silvery skin that seemed to reflect the starlight, large eyes with pupils like spiral galaxies, and delicate markings that shifted color with her expressions. As James demonstrated the art of marshmallow roasting, he found himself sharing stories about Earth's customs, his photography work, and the simple joy of spending time in nature. Thera, in turn, began to speak of her own world, a planet orbiting a binary star system, where the concept of sunset didn't exist and fires were indeed traditionally used for war ceremonies. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, examining a perfectly roasted marshmallow, our ancient texts require updated interpretation. The universe seems to hold more possibilities than our scholars anticipated. James watched as she cautiously tasted the marshmallow, her eyes widening at the novel sensation. Sometimes the best discoveries come from misunderstandings, he offered. Though I have to admit, I never thought my campfire would lead to first contact with an alien civilization. The night deepened around them, and as they continued to talk, James couldn't help but notice how the starlight seemed to dance in Thera's spiral galaxy eyes. He had come to these mountains seeking beautiful images to capture, but instead, he found himself at the beginning of what felt like a much bigger story, one that started with a simple campfire and might just change the course of human-alien relations forever. What neither of them knew yet was that high above Earth's atmosphere, Thera's battle fleet was awaiting her signal, and the next few days would test not only their growing trust but the fate of both their species. Dawn broke over the mountains in gentle waves of pink and gold, finding James and Thera still deep in conversation. The campfire had burned down to glowing embers, and empty marshmallow wrappers lay scattered around them like fallen leaves. Through the night, their discussion had ranged from Earth's various cultures to the intricacies of stellar navigation, each finding the other's perspective increasingly fascinating. Your world contains such contradictions, Thera mused, watching the sunrise with an expression of wonder. You build machines that can capture moments in time, yet you choose to sleep under the stars. You possess nuclear technology, yet you find joy in burning sugar over fire. James chuckled, adjusting his camera to capture the morning light playing across Thera's iridescent features. Humans are full of contradictions. Maybe that's what makes us interesting. A sudden chirping sound emanated from Thera's armor, and her expression shifted to one of concern. The fleet grows restless. They await my report on the war beacon, on your campfire. She stood, her armor shimming in the dawn light. I should tell them there's been a misunderstanding, but... James prompted, lowering his camera. But they may not understand. Our culture values precision, clear signals, definitive actions. The concept of a ceremonial fire being used for recreation, it goes against centuries of our military doctrine. She began pacing, her antennae twitching with agitation. They might think I've been compromised, or worse, that I've fallen for some human deception. James stood as well, his mind racing. Then we need to show them, not just tell them. You said your people value precision and clear signals. What if we could demonstrate Earth's peaceful intentions in a way they couldn't misinterpret? Thera's galaxy eyes focused on him intently. What do you propose? You have sophisticated scanning technology, right? Use it. Scan every campfire on Earth right now. Look at their patterns, their locations, the people around them. You'll find families roasting marshmallows, hikers staying warm, photographers like me capturing nature's beauty. No military formations, no synchronized signals, just life. The commander activated a holographic display from her armor, her fingers dancing through streams of data. This could work, but... James, there's something you should know. She hesitated, her skin shifting to a deeper shade of silver. The fleet carries enough firepower to reduce your major cities to ash. If they're not convinced, then we'll convince them, James said firmly, reaching out to touch her arm before catching himself. To his surprise, Thera didn't pull away from the contact. Her armor felt warm beneath his fingers, almost alive. Your people value knowledge and precision, let's use that. I can help you document Earth's campfire traditions, gather evidence. We can turn this misunderstanding into a chance for real connection between our species. As if in response to his words, Thera's communicator chirped again, more urgently this time. She glanced at the holographic display, her expression growing grave. The fleet has detected more fire signals appearing across your western territories. They're moving into attack position. Sunrise cookouts, James realized. It's Saturday morning, families will be starting campfires all across the national parks. He quickly pulled up his phone's map application. Look, we can prove it. These are designated campgrounds, recreational areas. Not military installations. Thera studied the map, her antennae moving in complex patterns. This data correlates with our scans, but the fleet will require more concrete evidence. She turned to James, her galaxy eyes intense. Would you be willing to risk everything to help me convince them? If we fail. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most important discoveries, James replied, already packing his camera gear. Besides, how many photographers can say they helped prevent an interplanetary war? A small smile tugged at the corners of Thera's mouth, an expression she seemed to have picked up from him during their night of conversation. Your species' capacity for optimism in the face of danger is remarkable. Is that a compliment or a criticism? James asked, shouldering his backpack. Perhaps both, she replied, her armor shifting to match the morning sunlight. We should hurry. The fleet will expect my report within 3 of your Earth hours, and we need compelling evidence. They quickly broke camp, Thera using her technology to eliminate any trace of their presence. As they prepared to leave, James caught her staring at the remains of their campfire, her expression thoughtful. What is it? He asked. I was trained to see fire as a weapon, a signal of war, she said softly. In one night, you've shown me it can be a source of warmth, of connection, of... She paused, her skin flickering with colors James hadn't seen before, understanding. James smiled, snapping one last photo of the mountain sunrise. Maybe that's exactly what we need to show your fleet. Not that we're harmless, but that we're worth understanding. Together, they set off down the mountain trail, racing against time to gather the evidence they needed. Above them, invisible to human eyes, a fleet of warships hung in high orbit, their weapons primed and ready. The next few hours would determine whether Earth's campfires would continue to spark joy and connection, or whether they would become the very signal of war they'd been mistaken for in the first place. What neither James nor Thera fully realized yet was that their growing connection, this bridge between two vastly different species, might prove to be the most powerful evidence of all. The morning sun climbed higher as James and Thera made their way through the national park, stopping at various campsites to document Earth's peaceful fire traditions. James's camera worked overtime, capturing families cooking breakfast, scouts learning wilderness skills, and elderly couples simply enjoying their morning coffee by dying embers. Accessing fleet communication channels, Thera announced, her armor projecting another holographic display. The Council of Admirals demands an explanation for my delayed report. Her antennae twitched nervously as she began transmitting the images James had captured. A deep voice resonated from her communicator, speaking in a language that sounded like crystalline wind chimes. Thera responded rapidly, her own voice taking on the same musical quality. James watched her face, trying to read the alien expressions he was slowly learning to understand. They're skeptical, she translated finally. They acknowledge the patterns of non-military usage but require more substantial proof that this isn't an elaborate deception. She turned to James, her galaxy eyes troubled. They're giving us one planetary rotation to provide conclusive evidence, or they will proceed with their original interpretation of the fire signals. James ran his fingers through his hair, thinking fast. What about historical evidence? Every human culture has stories about gathering around fires, traditions that go back thousands of years. There must be a way to show them this isn't some recent cover-up. Before Thera could respond, they heard voices approaching along the trail. A group of young children led by a park ranger came into view, all carrying notebooks and wearing junior ranger badges. And this is where the Native Americans would gather for storytelling, the ranger was explaining. The campfire was the heart of their community, a place where history was passed down through generations. James and Thera exchanged glances. Perfect timing, he whispered. To the approaching group, he called out, "Excuse me. I'm a photographer working on a documentary about campfire traditions. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions?" The ranger, a woman named Rita Blackwood, was more than happy to share her knowledge. As she spoke about different cultural traditions surrounding fire, from ancient healing ceremonies to modern-day camping traditions, Thera's instruments recorded everything, analyzing the historical consistency of the information. Fascinating, Thera murmured as Rita described how early humans first learned to control fire. Your species' entire civilization is intertwined with this element. It's not just a tool or a weapon, it's part of your cultural DNA. The children, initially shy around the strange-looking, documentary crew, Thera had activated her armor's camouflage mode to appear more human, began asking their own questions. One small girl wanted to know if they had ever made fire with sticks, while a curious boy asked if they knew any good ghost stories. As they interacted with the group, James noticed something remarkable happening. Thera's initially rigid posture began to relax, her responses becoming more natural. She seemed particularly intrigued by the children's innocent curiosity, their complete lack of fear or prejudice. When Rita offered to demonstrate traditional fire-starting techniques, Thera's scientific interest was piqued. She recorded detailed scans of the process, her antennae moving in complex patterns that James had learned indicated deep concentration. "Commander," a stern voice suddenly crackled from her communicator in English, making everyone jump. "Your proximity to these human offspring is concerning. Are you being held hostage?" "No, Admiral," Thera replied firmly. "I am conducting crucial cultural research. These young ones, they're not warriors or deceivers. They're learners, seekers of knowledge, much like our own younglings." There was a long pause before the Admiral spoke again. "Your behavior is highly irregular, Commander. The Council requires your immediate presence for consultation." James felt his heart sink, but Thera stood her ground. "With respect, Admiral, I cannot leave now. We are on the verge of a breakthrough in understanding. The human's relationship with fire is far more complex and profound than our ancient texts suggested." "Commander Thera," the Admiral's voice grew colder. "You have become emotionally compromised. A retrieval team is being dispatched to your location." The children, oblivious to the true nature of the conversation, continued practicing their fire-starting techniques under Rita's guidance. As James watched them, an idea struck him. "Thera," he whispered urgently, "what if we could show your council not just what fire means to us, but what it could mean for your people too? Not as a weapon or a signal, but as a bridge between cultures?" She turned to him, her galaxy eyes swirling with conflicting emotions. "What are you suggesting?" "A ceremony," he said, his excitement growing. "Not a war ceremony, but a peace ceremony. Something new, combining your traditions with ours. If your people value precision and ceremony so much, let's give them one they can't ignore." Thera's antennae straightened with sudden understanding. "A diplomatic innovation." Yes, this could work. But we'll have to act quickly. The retrieval team will arrive within the hour. As they began to plan, James couldn't help but notice how the morning sunlight played across Thera's features, making her skin shimmer like stardust. Despite the looming crisis, despite the fleet of warships hanging over their heads, he felt strangely hopeful. Perhaps it was the photographer in him, always looking for beauty in unexpected places, but he was beginning to see something extraordinary in this clash of cultures, not just the threat of war, but the possibility of something much more profound. The children's laughter echoed through the trees as they successfully sparked their first flame, and in that moment, both James and Thera knew they were witnessing something powerful, the simple, universal joy of discovery. Now they just had to find a way to share that joy with a fleet of suspicious alien warships before it was too late. The sun had reached its zenith when the retrieval team's ships breached the atmosphere, their arrival masked by advanced cloaking technology. Only Thera's instruments detected their presence, 3 sleek vessels taking position above the clearing where Rita and the children were still gathered, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding above their heads. "We have 18 minutes, Thera muttered, her armor shifting restlessly. "Once they establish a containment field, we'll lose our chance to prevent this escalation." James was already in motion, his photographer's instincts driving him to act rather than freeze. "Rita," he called out, trying to keep his voice casual, "would you and the children be interested in participating in a special ceremony? It's for my documentary, about how different cultures use fire to bring people together." Rita's eyes lit up at the educational opportunity. "That sounds wonderful. What kind of ceremony did you have in mind?" As James quickly explained his idea for a multicultural peace ceremony, Thera worked frantically with her technological instruments, preparing to broadcast the event to the fleet. Her antennae twitched continuously, monitoring the retrieval team's approach. "The children will need to form a circle," Thera instructed, her voice carrying an authority that made even Rita straighten up. "Each with their own small fire, but arranged in a precise pattern." The next 15 minutes were a blur of activity. James helped the children position their small fire pits while Thera used her armor's capabilities to subtly enhance the flames, making them burn with hints of colors that matched her homeworld's binary stars. Rita, caught up in the spirit of the moment, began teaching the children a traditional Native American fire blessing. 12 incoming signatures, Thera whispered to James. "The retrieval team is deploying ground forces." James nodded, continuing to snap photographs while keeping his voice low. "Then let's give them something worth seeing." He turned to the assembled group. "Everyone ready? Remember, this ceremony is about bringing different people together, about turning strangers into friends." The children sat cross-legged around their small fires, their faces glowing with excitement. Rita began the blessing, her voice clear and strong in the mountain air. Then, in a moment that made James's breath catch, Thera stepped forward and began to sing. The sound that emerged from her was unlike anything Earth had ever heard, a crystalline melody that seemed to dance with the flames themselves. The fires responded to her voice, shifting and swaying in patterns that defied natural law. The children gasped in wonder, but none showed fear. Instead, they began to hum along, their simple human voices weaving into Thera's alien song in an unexpectedly beautiful harmony. Through his camera lens, James captured the exact moment when the retrieval team emerged from the trees, 12 tall figures in armor similar to Thera's, their weapons at ready. But they stopped short at the sight before them, human children singing with an alien commander, while fires danced in impossible patterns between them. "This," Thera announced, switching to her native language that now rang out like chimes in the mountain air, "is the true power of fire on Earth. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a force that brings different worlds together." The retrieval team's leader stepped forward, his armor more elaborately decorated than the others. "Commander Thera, you were sent to investigate a potential act of war. Instead, we find you conducting, what is this?" "A peace ceremony," James interjected, stepping forward. "One that honors both our traditions." He held up his camera, showing the images he'd captured, the children's innocent faces, the harmonious blend of earth fire and alien song, the perfect circle of understanding they'd created together. The leader's antennae moved in complex patterns as he studied the images. "This is unprecedented. As is all first contact," Thera replied. "Our ancient texts warn us of fire as a weapon, but they never spoke of fire as a bridge between worlds." She gestured to the children, who were still watching in fascination as the flames shifted colors. "These young ones learned our songs in minutes. They accepted our differences without fear. Perhaps we could learn from their example." The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the trees as the Council of Admirals materialized in the clearing, not in person, but as towering holograms that made the children gasp in wonder. Their forms shimmered with a translucent beauty, like aurora borealis given shape and purpose. 7 figures, each wearing armor more ornate than Thera's, stood in a semicircle around the gathering. The head admiral, distinguished by elaborate crystalline patterns across their armor, spoke first. "Commander Thera, your transmission has caused considerable debate among the council. This interpretation of fire signals is unprecedented in our history." James stood quietly beside Thera, his camera hanging unused around his neck. He'd captured hundreds of images today, but somehow he knew the most important moments couldn't be photographed, they had to be lived. "Honorable Council," Thera began, her voice steadied despite the gravity of the moment, "I stand by my findings. Earth's relationship with fire is not one of warfare, but of community, learning, and growth. What we initially interpreted as a threat is actually an opportunity for unprecedented cultural exchange." The council members' antennae moved in complex synchronization as they processed this information. One of them stepped forward, their armor shifting colors like deep space viewed through a prism. "You propose we disregard centuries of military doctrine based on one planetary rotation of observations?" The admiral's tone was skeptical, but not dismissive. "I propose we expand our doctrine," Thera replied. She gestured to the children, who were still sitting around their small fires, their eyes wide with wonder at the alien holograms. "These young humans have shown us that fire can be more than our texts suggest. They've learned our songs, shared their traditions, and demonstrated a capacity for understanding that rivals our own." Rita, who had maintained remarkable composure throughout the extraordinary events, stepped forward. "If I may," she said, addressing the council with quiet confidence, "on Earth, we have a saying, 'The fire that warms my neighbor need not burn down my home.' Different cultures can share the same element while using it in different ways." The council members exchanged looks, their antennae twitching in rapid communication. The head admiral's gaze swept across the scene, the small fires still burning with otherworldly colors, the children who showed no fear of their alien visitors, and finally, to where James and Thera stood together. "Commander," the head admiral said, "your proximity to this human appears significant." Thera's skin flickered with colors that James had learned to recognize as embarrassment, but she held her ground. "My interaction with James Harrison has been instrumental in understanding Earth's culture. He has shown me that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from following ancient texts, but from being willing to see things in a new light." James felt his heart race as Thera's galaxy eyes met his for a moment before she continued. "The humans have a concept called photography, the art of capturing light to tell stories. Through James's lens, I've seen how one perspective can transform understanding. Just as his camera reveals hidden beauty, our mission here could reveal new possibilities for both our peoples." The head admiral was silent for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, they did something unprecedented. They knelt down to address one of the children directly. "Young one, what do you think of us?" The little girl, named Lily, didn't hesitate. "I think you're beautiful," she said simply. "And I like how you made our fires dance with your songs. Could you teach us more?" Something shifted in the admiral's posture, a softening that seemed to ripple through all the council members. Perhaps, they said slowly, we have been too rigid in our interpretations. Too quick to see threats where there might be opportunities. The council members gathered closer, their holograms creating a dance of light that rivaled the campfires. After a brief but intense discussion in their crystalline language, the head admiral turned back to face the group. The council has reached a decision, they announced. We will establish a new protocol for interpreting fire signatures on Earth. Furthermore, we propose a cultural exchange program, with Commander Thera as our primary liaison, to better understand and document the peaceful uses of fire across human civilization. The retrieval team, who had been standing at attention throughout the proceedings, visibly relaxed. The children cheered, and Rita wiped away tears of joy and relief. There is one condition, the head admiral added, looking directly at James. We request that you continue your documentation of this process. Your photography provides a unique perspective that may help bridge our understanding. James smiled, his hand automatically reaching for his camera. I'd be honored, he said, glancing at Thera. Though I have a feeling the best pictures are yet to come. As the sun began to set, casting the clearing in golden light, the council's holograms faded away, leaving behind a sense of possibility that hung in the air like starlight. The children began teaching the retrieval team members how to make esmores, while Rita started organizing plans for a cultural exchange program at the park. Thera turned to James, her armor reflecting the sunset in ways that his photographers' eye couldn't help but appreciate. Your Earth sunsets, she said softly, they're not so different from the light of our binary stars. Maybe that's the real lesson here, James replied, raising his camera to capture her silhouette against the dying light. No matter how different we seem, we're all looking at the same universe, just from different angles. Thera's antennae moved in what he now recognized as amusement. A photographer's philosophy? A human one, he corrected, lowering his camera to meet her galaxy eyes. Though I'm starting to think some truths are universal. As the fires burned low and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, James and Thera sat together on the same log where their extraordinary story had begun. Above them, the fleet's engines powered down from battle readiness to standard orbit, their energy signatures shifting from red to a peaceful blue that painted the clouds with aurora-like lights. What had started as a misunderstanding about a simple campfire had become something far more significant, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful connections begin with a simple willingness to see things differently, to share stories across the vastness of space, and to find warmth in the same flame.